Welcome to Life's Not Linear, episode 60. Today we have Ambrose as our guest. Ambrose, could you please give us a little bit of an introduction and a background to yourself?
Yeah, Ambrose WB. Sometimes people call me Coach Ambrose. Either one's good with me. Currently, I am focusing on mental performance coaching. And so I have two, sides that people know me as. One, my more personal side, which is also professional. My business I've been running since about 2006. And then professionally, but also in the world of community, I direct a program called Sky Schools here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And our goal is to help people manage their stress and their emotions using breathwork and meditation.
That's awesome. Could you talk a little bit more about the people that you are helping? Kind of like your
Yeah,
audience.
so perfect. So Sky Schools, as it sounds, it might lead you right to the idea that I work with kids in schools, which is true. So we have that sector segment, right, of children and then who's around the children. So that's their educators and also their parents. Milwaukee's pretty unique. So in Milwaukee, we went to after school programming, which also involves obviously the children and their parents, and then what you might call educators, youth workers, people who are into youth development work, and also people who are just interested and intrigued by breathing meditation. But our real focus is the school community or after school communities, children, parents, and educators.
And kind of what led you to do this breathwork meditation work, and especially doing it with students? Like, how did you even get into that space?
Yeah, it was an accident. So back in 2012, I had a really booming fitness business. So we were doing personal training, group training, and long-term youth athletic development. So I've always worked with kids, but was more in the realm of fitness. So exercise and nutrition primarily. I've always threw in, how to prepare for college and how to deal with high school because as a younger person, I didn't have those avenues or those skills. So I've always wanted to include that in my own business. So because of a few things that might come up later in our conversation, I put the business on pause, made a pivot to go online, and just started doing what I typically do when I'm feeling lost or feeling full, which is to go volunteer. So after volunteering at a couple of local youth organizations, I landed at one. And the very first thing that we did as a staff, that was my very first paid for professional development, was a program that I now direct. So I just went to it as an employee and started volunteering actually. So I volunteered for 2 years. And after I started to go back into business, I did some contracting work with them, a little bit of work here and there. And it was obviously that the need is so big and the work is so great that I came on full time as director of the program locally.
Wow, that's epic. Just how that transition happened.
Hmm.
So you mentioned that you didn't have these resources or these avenues when you were in high school and college. So how was that for you? I guess like making that leap from, or how was high school making that leap into college and not really having these resources? I guess how was your like mindset and how were you able to do that?
Yeah, it's always the idea, like looking back, but I can't say I struggled. I enjoyed school, I enjoyed learning, so I think that gave me a leg up. I went to a private school here in Milwaukee, so the education was a good education. Not that you can't get a good education in public school, but I went to a private school, and I knew the value of education because my mom was paying a lot of money for it. And sometimes I would have to get up in the morning to go sell papers. So I also knew the value of it because that's how we paid for me to go to that school. It was just simple things, right? Like I was a good athlete and I didn't understand how to gain weight. Back then my coaches told me to lift weights more, and that's what I did. And not realizing that lifting weights does not make you gain weight. So something as simple as that. Public speaking, like speaking now as I do as a professional, as a younger person, I would be sweating and probably turn down this opportunity because I wasn't good at it. It made me feel nervous and didn't have that confidence. So I think, while I was in it, just like most problems, you don't really know you're in the problem because you're in it. So I say sometimes you can't see the picture if you can't see the frame if you're in the picture, right? So now I can look back and frame it up a little bit differently. So high school is what it was. I got, 3.5, 3.3, something like that GPA. Got offered to play ball at a bigger college, and I got injured my senior year. So another example, right? Didn't know how to rehab, didn't know how to deal with the emotions behind injury. I'm injured right now, and I can deal with that a lot better as an adult because one, it's not that serious. I don't think it's that serious, and also two, I know how to get to do other things that I can improve on while the injury's there. But that was an example of that. College was just under maximum. I didn't really maximize college. I played football in college. Again, started off really strong with 3.5, and but I didn't know what I wanted to do other than play in the NFL, which I realized pretty early on that I wasn't NFL material at that point. But I didn't have an opportunity. I didn't have the coaching that I think I would have needed to go from, okay, cool. Like, what do you want to do? Here's a piece of paper with all these careers under your major, but really having the understanding of it, I think would have taken an experience. So when I graduated school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do still. And that's one of those things that, I ask kids that on a more regular basis, what do you do right now? Like, not what do you want to do in the future? What do you do right now? And what skills are you building right now? Because what I realized is that I'm just doing what I have the skills to do right now. And yeah, some people have a vision, they have a purpose and a passion and whatnot. I think other people just have skills. And if you have skills, then people reach out to you because they know of you for that thing. And if you have that ability to do that, then you're always gonna be valuable to people. So thank goodness I've gained some skills since I was younger that now afford me to live a happy, fulfilled lifestyle.
So when did you get into the realm of like breathwork and meditation? Was it in college or what? Where did
It's a
you like
great question.
fall in the timeline?
I would say probably, so I was born in Milwaukee, and so I'm turning on notifications because it keeps chiming and it's throwing me off.
Mhm.
I would say my very first introduction to, I guess, what could be called mindfulness or yoga was watching kung fu movies with my godmom, Lorene, as a young person. That's when I first thought about idea of your mind and your body are somehow together, and these guys and women would do meditation. They would do something that I thought was meditation. At that point, I thought they were doing was more, what do you call it, when you're able to move things with your mind, or you're able to, focus in a way that is really different. So I tried that as a young person, probably from the ages of, who knows, 6, 7, 8. I would say definitely by 9. And I would say I stopped around 12 because it wasn't working. I believed in it, but I just thought it wasn't working for me. Again, the lack of coaching. And I didn't pick it back up until maybe college when they talk about visualization or mental imagery in sports. But again, not being coached on it. But, I had the awareness that the mentality or the mental mindset piece is always important. I didn't have to use that in high school because I was better than the people I was playing with at my small school. So again, there's an idea, but I didn't meditate. So really, it was as a young person, and then I just stepped into this space of Sky Schools, and it was something I was looking for without knowing that I was looking for it.
Nice. Was there any like, because you said like you were looking for it, but you didn't know you were looking for it. Do you remember having any like hesitation or any like wondering about jumping in?
Yeah, I guess maybe the better word is I was always open to the idea of it, which is why, even not being a religious person, but understanding that prayer and contemplation and journaling and gratefulness practices are similar thoughts, similar lines of practices. So, me being an athlete, once I met my breathing coach, Bill, it was simple. Like, oh, there's a coach. I'm learning this new skill. I learned a practice. I went home and did it by myself. It didn't really work that well. So as an athlete, what I've learned to do after my years of playing sports is to reach out to your coach. So in high school, I don't think I really needed to talk to my coaches that much one-on-one. I was ready to receive their feedback. And in college, there were things that were happening personally with me that I might have been able to overcome faster with my coach's help. I remember the first time I really asked my coach for help in college was when I lost my scholarship. So I said, "Hey, Coach Pete, like I need help," and he helped me figure it out pretty quickly. So as an adult, I now know there's always going to be people that want to help you. And if someone is teaching you something, that person typically says, "If you have any questions, reach out to me."
Yeah.
Again, as a younger person, I would never do that. It just didn't even register to me that I can actually ask you for help. So anyways, after the first workshop, after not being successful in my own practice, I just reached out to my mentor, Bill. He said, "Hey, come see me at the high school." And again, that turned into me realizing, okay, cool. If I do this thing on a regular basis, like actually with him, and I have to pay for it, I can just show up. Then I'm going to learn how to do this for a lifetime. So that one inquiry to him turned into 2 years of me practicing, and then it turned into a job. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was for me to have my own personal practice.
That's great to hear. I'm glad that you were able to like lean on these people because, yeah, like you said, we even, I say like, oh, if you ever need anything, hit me up, or people are like, oh yeah, feel free to call, text, and we kind of just forget. And then we're in those moments where it's like, oh shoot, like I wish I had this, I wish I had some help, and then we forget about all the people that have like offered help to us.
Yeah. And the worst part, you hear people say, "Nobody was there to help me," and it's like I can't say that.
Yeah.
What it is that there's always someone there, but when you're stressed out, what you feel is real. So I don't want to minimize anyone's feelings. You might feel that way. If you feel that way, it's true. And if you have the ability to just know that there's always someone there, and what you get to practice is looking for those people. If you can look for those people, then you'll be helped. And also, it might be some pride and some ego, some humility that needs to be involved, which is also a skill that you can build. But I figured, that's the thing. In school, like some of my friends who are successful in their own rights had that skill in college, and now we're adults, and they're talking about their mentors from college. I'm like, I don't have any mentors I can recall from college. I know I had professors, people that I might have talked to make sure I got this B minus, why isn't it a B plus type of thing, but I just didn't really do that as a younger person. So that's one thing as a coach now. I don't want people to ever meet me and then be able to say, honestly, no one's there to help me. Because I tell everyone always at the end of our conversations, hey, how can I help you? Or any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, let me know, so that people know that I'm also coachable. So yeah, so I feel like for young people, especially students, maximize that opportunity. Like you're actually paying for it. You're paying for the ability to, yeah, right. You're paying for it. So whether you call that mentorship or training or whatever you want to call it, don't squander those opportunities because they're valuable.
I want to go back to, you mentioned like you reached out to Coach Pete for some help in college. And I'm wondering, what were some moments in whether it was college or a young career that you were struggling, and how were you able to like overcome those things?
Yeah. So like the biggest struggle I would say that I've had, so we talked about what happened when my business, changed, right? It wasn't so much a struggle because of finances. It was struggle just because of things were changing. And then me feeling like I wasn't doing what it was more of a gut intuitive feeling. So I'll go back to post-college because that's probably the most applicable, with you and your students. And I did what they told me to do. They told me to be good, go to school, graduate from high school, go to college. I played a sport, I was in a fraternity. I did volunteering. I didn't go to jail. I didn't do those things. I was doing the right things that they said to do. And I still couldn't find work. I couldn't find a job. So this is 05, 6, 7. Having 2 degrees. I was like, I should be good. Then watching my friends. This is before Facebook and Instagram are so super popular now. So it wasn't as bad as it is right now, but you can still see people doing certain things, and you're wondering why you aren't able to do those things. So for those 2 years, that was a tough spot, and I didn't ask for help. I didn't really know that I was embarrassed the fact that I wasn't able to find work. So I applied for jobs in the Midwest, but I had this thing in my mind that I could not go back home to Milwaukee until I had a job, which is kind of silly to say out loud, but that's what I thought. And even at that time, I thought a good job was me wearing a tie to work. Like I wore a tie to work, I'm in a good place. So ended up through that time, did get a job, and it's funny because there was actually at an online education place called Colorado Tech University. This is before education was popular online, so it's like, but I get to wear a tie. So I went to the job interview, and we had a conversation like I'm having with you with this guy. I didn't really care about the job. So I was throwing parties at that time to make money to pay for my rent. Didn't need that much money to pay for rent. So I threw parties and paid for my rent that year. And he's like, hey, you're asking for a little bit more than we want to pay, but I've got some more people to talk to, and I'll give you a call next week if it's like, no problem. So I'm in Chicago, lived in Indiana at the time, and I was just walking around the city and made it back to the train, and the guy gave me a phone call and said, hey, we can't do that. We can do this. And I'm like, fine. Like, let me take the job. And I maybe lasted there for like 2 months. It just was like, this isn't for me. I was calling people who were, as we know now, you're a marketer. You're up late at night on a Friday. They're running ads at you. Click on the ad, and then you have someone following up with you, which is fine, if what I'm offering you actually want. But I was calling moms in Kentucky who are in the back of the diner whispering to me for a conversation. And it's just like, all right, I'm competitive. There's some sales goals here. My name's on the board. I know how to hustle and work hard, but at the same time, just didn't feel good. So I quit and came back to Milwaukee, and ended up working at my former employer in high school, a shoe store, for about a year. But during that whole time, I was already coaching. So I don't really think about coaching as a job, mainly because you don't get paid that much to call it a job, but also because I would do it for free. And I actually got certified to be a personal trainer to be able to fill that skill gap of how to actually train, how to actually eat, and how to actually recover. So I made my first pitch to the company that I worked for actually to have a website. So I would say, to answer your question directly, I would think when things are tough, I think, okay, cool, what can I do? That's my first reaction, is like, okay, cool, things are getting tough. What can I create? What can I make? And even during that process, I don't feel it, but I think other people might see it as I'm being a little bit different. I remember my mom told me during that time, living in the basement of my mom's house at that time, working at a shoe store, trying to just pay my bills, which is just really student loans at that time. And she goes, I don't know what you're gonna do, but you gotta get out of here. And I'm like, you're gonna kick me out your house? And I'm already struggling, right? So it's like, I'm not paying that much to live there, but I'm paying something. And this is how it works in my life, at least. I can then go from not paying very much to paying half the rent somewhere else because I have to, because I have to go find somewhere to live now. So that job with the shoe store, the pitch that I made for a website, they didn't even look at the pitch. So I quit that job. I was already working at a local gym next to the high school that I was training at. And longer conversation, the coaches that I worked with, great people, but I didn't feel in my gut that they were really doing it with belief that the kids could be better. And that's the only reason I was there. So I quit coaching, moved into personal training, and really after that, things kind of took off because I was meeting more people who were informal mentors, people that were CEOs here, executives here, they were parents, they were grandparents. So at 22, 23, I think one of the best things that happened to me is that I had a range of people I was talking to that were from, 8 years old, but up to like 92, who had a bunch of experiences. And I was able to soak in the information in between push-ups and squats. And I found a lot of mentorship through my fitness business.
That's awesome. And I love that you mentioned like a couple of these pivots. I love that when you realize that, that company or that thing wasn't for you, you left. Like a lot of people, it takes them a lot longer. They're like weighing the pros and the cons. But it sounds like to you, it was like, all right, they're not doing this, doesn't align with me, I'm out. And I just feel like that's such a great skill to have, to just be like, doesn't align with me, all right, what's next?
I was one of the little caveat there because it's funny because looking back I know that, right? But during it, it's like it's almost like it's like it's a reaction almost. Like if you were to hear a loud noise and you would jump, that's how it really comes off. Just like I didn't show up to work that day planning on not coming back. You know, it wasn't like, so like to your point, I didn't think about it. And sometimes I do wonder, you know, people have different processes, you know, so if your process is to mull over things like that, because in other places in my life, I have to have a process, a checklist. When it comes to, you know, what feels right, and, you know, you spend time on a presentation, you know, I'm giving you an idea that I would use myself, because the quick idea was, yo, it's 2006, you don't have a website yet. So for 4 years, you had people that would have bought your shoes from different states, meaning me, and you don't even have the infrastructure for it. So to me, that was a no-brainer. You know, but for my own business, you know, I wish I had to have more thought about that. I guess to give you a quick story about that. So why I'm saying that is that I showed up to my boot camp one morning and realized what was happening, that the climate and culture of my company wasn't quite where I wanted to be. Because at that point, I had a team of 6 trainers and they were doing most of the training and I was training them on being a trainer. And I saw I had mean girls in my boot camp. And it's like we have new people, and we have veterans, and usually when I was doing it, that will be the veterans new to help the new people feel acclimated to the group. It didn't happen for about a week, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna take off a couple of months." And what they heard is that I quit. But I really was saying, "Hey, look, I need to be able to reassess because I lost 3 of my trainers at that time. So they got promotions, which was great. That's actually the goal of the company, was to help trainers grow. So I really wish that time I thought about it more, because I think people were hurt by the fact that they thought I was quitting or leaving somewhere. And I was just like, no, I need to be able um, to reassess and reset and come back. So on one hand, it's a skill or a blessing. On the other hand, it can be a curse. So if you're going to make a pivot strongly like that, you know, do it with your own your own regard.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's hard, and I'm feeling that a lot lately now with the different climate we're in as well, with like COVID and the political climate. And I've noticed like when I take a step back, some people kind of take it personally. And it's like, no, it's not you. It's I need to figure it out.
Yeah,
So it's like, how do you communicate that it's not personal? And sometimes people just are gonna think what they're gonna think, and you gotta do your best.
that's a good point. Yeah, and that's what, again, so the skill that I've gained lately is not taking things as personal. Being able to objectively look at situations and not and look at situation and not judge. You know, that's what mindfulness is. That's what I teach. And again, I really wish I had that skill back then, because, you know, looking back, yeah, people they're paying money, they're paying good money. I wasn't a cheap trainer. They are getting results, or they're working to get results. They have friends in the group. And all they heard was that this is stopping. That's what they heard. No matter what I said, you know, now I know to do things in visual, do things with written, do hit people in more than one learning style, right? So I was just speaking, and who knows what I said I actually said that day. So you're right. You know, you can't control how other people feel, control how you feel. But I do think that, you know, I have as a marketer, as a business owner, as an educator, I have a responsibility to articulate my message the best of my ability. And then after that, it's my job to let it go as well, because no matter how well we do it, people are still going to feel the way they feel. So they have their own journey they're going on. That's also not linear. So
Yeah.
God bless them. And if you're ready to have a conversation in the future, I'll be around.
I want to touch on kind of jumping back again. Sorry, we keep going back and forth, but
This is awesome. I'm glad we're doing it that
what,
way.
you said you were like, so coming out of college, you didn't have a job lined up. And I know we kind of talked about that. You're like, I have 2 degrees. Like, why the heck do I not have a job? I love that you were throwing parties to like pay rent. I don't know. That sounds like a lot of effort, but you got to do what you got to do. So probably like, side note, I think it's cool to look back at what you're doing now and be like, yeah, but a few years ago, I was like throwing parties to make ends meet. Like, so it's innovative.
That's the word, right? Yes.
But I guess I wanted to hear, because a lot of students are in a similar situation where they're graduating and they don't have a job lined up. So it's,
Yeah.
um, I guess, what is some advice that you would give to those students when they're going through that, whether it's like mentally how to cope with that, um, emotionally, or like tangible steps to like, okay, like what's next? How can I reframe and find a job or make my own work or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say one is to, I set some ultimatums. So ultimatum that I set was I'm not going to work at Walmart anymore. So that's the job that I worked my senior year of college because I lost. So let me go. So I did have a good student, and I went into a slump where I was really confused being a Black student in a white organization, white school, in a very white state, white, so it was very culturally, it was very hard for me back then. And having mentorship back then would have been helpful there. So I ended up having some risky behaviors that my grades slipped and I lost some scholarships. So I did work my senior year at Walmart, and it was wonderful. Organization at the time. I learned a lot about business through our managers and whatnot. But I did set an ultimatum that once I graduated, I was like, I burned that bridge. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I guess I wouldn't change it right now. But, just be aware if that's how you are. If you burn bridges or, not burn bridges, but you burn your bridges so you can't go backwards, then that you do that so that it can give you the energy to be able to move forward. So I went to 22 interviews that summer and that fall. And then once, the holidays came, I didn't do it again until like that spring. Mm-hmm. And that next year I did 21 interviews. So I think during that time, what I did that wasn't maybe the best thing is that I had a picture in my mind of what I wanted to do, right? Wear a tie. That's all. It was a really arbitrary goal. And at that time, what people wanted was me to sell stuff. And I thought I wasn't a salesperson, but what they saw was the Division I college football, blah, 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 blah. And now I know that people like athletes because they're good team players. They're good with competition. I didn't quite realize the skills that I had and why people were looking for me back then. And I had a false perception of what it meant to be a salesperson. And now I'm a salesperson, like most people are. I think that 68% of people are salespeople. And I also didn't know that salespeople also made more money than other people. And they're also able to have autonomy, right? So I think I had some limiting beliefs that restricted my ability to move forward. So, check your limiting beliefs. And along with that, I would say is my ego at the time wouldn't have allowed me to get a job that I thought was not worthy of where I was in life. Cool. Walmart as a college student, fine. Walmart as a college graduate, I just thought that wasn't appropriate. So objectively, I needed to make money to pay bills. It didn't really matter where I worked to pay the bills because I needed money. And that's something that even today, I'm not sure how I would be able to handle it today. I would hope that I would just be able to go work somewhere. I'm seeing people drive Uber, and this is during COVID, but even pre-COVID, because they need to make extra money, and they're fine being a teacher and driving an Uber. And someone else might say, "Ooh, that person's driving," and it's like, "Yo, like we aren't." This is the last point I'll make about that. You aren't what you do. Yeah. So if you really tie what you do as to who you are, then you're gonna have a problem not lowering, but checking your ego and maybe taking a job that pays a little bit less or doesn't have the title that you want, or doesn't look like you maybe think it looks like or should look like. Because at this time right now, like times are rough, times are tough. So do what you have to do. So again, I went back to that shoe store because really I felt comfortable going there, even though at the same time I felt like being a cashier at a shoe store wasn't really where I needed to be at the time in my life, right? But it led me into marketing, it led me into writing business plans. And so what's the skill that you have? What skills did you build? Not what did you memorize in college, or not what did you learn in the book? Like what skills do you have? Are you someone that can do research? Great. Did you do a lot of papers? Do you write papers? You can write. Are you a good editor? You can edit. Did you throw parties because you were popular? Then you can do that. You can network. So I feel like that's the thing that is most important are, what are the things that we can't find someone else to do faster and cheaper than you can do it? Because that's when you're valuable, right? Is when you're not like other people, and you're not like other people because of your ups and your downs. Things that make you stick out are going to be a combination of both of those things.
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. The last thing I want to touch on, you mentioned um, in college, like being a Black student in a primarily white population, that caused some troubles for you or some struggles. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'm gonna date myself, which is all right for this. So when I went to school, I'm not sure how all schools do, but Valparaiso had a checkbox: international student, yes or no. And I thought it might be cool to have someone that's different than me. I get to meet and learn more. So I hit the checkbox, and my roommate is African American and Afghanistan. His dad's from Afghanistan, but he lived in Pakistan. And it was really interesting for me because, on one hand, he looked like a Black boy to me, and culturally, he obviously spoke a different language. He was Muslim, and he dressed different. So I couldn't tell, but also I knew by looking at him, like, this guy looks like a Black guy to me. But so that same year is when 9/11 happened. The towers fell, and I was able to see a shift in the climate and culture of our campus. I was only at school for about 3 weeks prior to that. The athletes go early, and then the kids come to school. So we only had a couple of days of school, and I remember just him wearing a graphic T-shirt and jeans as opposed to what he normally would wear. People thought they treated him differently because they thought he was different. He's the same person, but how he presents himself was different. So anyways, that was very confusing to me. That was my first cultural shift as a younger person post high school. And I also was watching him prior to that do his practice every day, which I didn't know his practice was at that point. I asked him, like, what the hell's this kid doing, putting his feet in my sink and rubbing his arms, but he was doing his prayer every 5 times a day. And that to me was very different. I've heard of it, never saw it before. And he was really open and talked to me about explaining things to me. So anyways, people don't really know this, but at that time, my uncle also died, who was the reason why we really played football. My Uncle Keith, who played in the NFL and trained us as kids in the summertime. So it was like me going to a new place and, not doing really well in my the 2-a-days before football started. That kind of got figured out, but I didn't do well, so I felt a little bit bad about that. My uncle died the night before 9/11.
Wow.
9/11 happened, and my roommate's getting all this bullshit, with racist people on campus. So I thought about becoming Muslim because I saw his discipline, and I saw how he didn't react to it. Like he just didn't. He was very compassionate about it, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what do you do that, and I assumed it was because of his religion. So, and he was talking to his dad, from Afghanistan on the phone multiple times. And he just said, you don't want to become Muslim. You just want to be disciplined. So you can be disciplined in anything in your life, Ambrose. And I had a pretty disciplined year that year, but I haven't said that out loud for a while, but that was a thing that really had me think about, not only white and Black, which sometimes our life kind of comes down to, even in the States, especially right now, but just also different cultures, like Muslim versus Christian. I went to a Lutheran school. So that was the first thing. And not that year, but the next year, I picked up history because of that experience. I wanted to understand more about Middle East. I wanted to learn more about Africa. So I picked up a ancient civilization studies major, the focus on African American Black history. And as I learned more about that, things I didn't learn in high school, that just made me really upset. I think people are having a similar experience right now where they're learning things they didn't know before. So I learned, of course, what I learned in school, but what ended up happening was I started buying all these other books, things that weren't in my curriculum, which is why my grades really started to drop, because I was in this space of like, why am I playing this game of getting A's and B's over here, but I really need to be learning this over here? And, being a Black kid on a football team is mainly white kids, but all the Black kids in the university play a sport. dating white women, having white friends, being in the white fraternity. So it's kind of this thing of like dissonance where, okay, I'm a Black person. I don't have any problem being around white people or Latin people or Asian people because I went to a diverse high school for the most part. But at the same time, not really feeling like I was, like I knew myself enough to be able to have even these conversations back then. So I was just learning. And at the end of the day, Tara, I felt very upset about what I was learning. And that I think also caused me to have some risky behavior. So honestly, I really bottled that stuff up. College ended, you know, I still like history. I don't dig into it as much as I used to. And I really feel that the last 7 years of having this mindfulness practice, and meditation practice, breathing practice, and allow me to be able to go back and look at history in a way that is, again, not so emotionally charged, because back then it made me angry. At the same time, I enjoyed becoming knowledgeable about what it is, but now I'm able to have these conversations in a way that doesn't trigger me as much. So it was really those two things: 9/11, my uncle passing, and not realizing that I wasn't going to play in the NFL, right? And then my studies, but also the culture on campus, and just really not. And we had a Black student organization, BSU, but then you have a bunch of Black students who also go through their same issues, their same problems, right? So coming from Milwaukee versus Chicago, that's a thing. Or light skin, dark skin, that's a thing. Speaking proper, not proper, that's a thing. So it was a really interesting time looking back at it, that I still unpack sometimes with some of my friends from college. But again, all that stuff, all the downs and all those little rough spots, if you can go back and reflect on them, allow you to understand, okay, this is what I'm doing now. And if I could do that, if I could do differently now, based on what I know then I'll be making progress. And that's the idea that I like to keep as I move forward.
Thank you for sharing that. I love how you were able to kind of like connect the dots. I love how much you just kind of jumped in, especially with your roommate. You were asking questions. That's a difficult 2 days where your uncle passed and then 9/11 happened. And I can't imagine how you felt or your roommate felt either, having to kind of, and like you said, how he like dressed differently because of what happened. It's just crazy the things we do to adapt to like the people around us versus what we like actually want to do, and then how much we're continuously learning. So I appreciate you sharing that journey with us.
Mm.